former President, Excellency Bar Jagdeo, Excellency High Commissioner of India, Mr. Mahalingam, and his counselor, Mr. K. Vijay Kumar, Political and Economic Officer of the United States Embassy, Mr. Raymond Slanina, distinguished trade union leaders from overseas and Guyana, and I recognize Brother Comrade Lincoln Lewis, the General Secretary of the GTUC, Mr. George Chullian, the International Coordinator for Sugar and Palm Oil Sector of the IUF, and in fact, author of a book based on the Rosal experience named Short Stumps, No Cabbage. Make sure you get a copy to read that. Welcome. Brother Clifton Grant, First Vice President of the University and Allied Workers of Jamaica and Regional Secretary of the IUF. Brothers at the head table from GAU, NASI, and other trade unions, CCW, and all the trade unions and workers, leaders of the sugar industry, former chairman of GAISUCO, Mr. Ronald Ali, former ministers of the government, and I've seen brother and comrade Irfan Ali, Barry Ramsaran, Indra Chandrapal. Oh, I now see Carville Duncan. I don't want to get licks before when I go outside. I have to mention him. Distinguished colleague and president of FETOG, Carville Duncan. GAISUCO, former CEO, Paul Bin, welcome. Mr. Tony Vera, himself a sugar magnate, welcome. And I welcome especially someone who has played a pivotal role in piloting a major case for the sugar workers. I'm happy that you've shown the interest to be here. Attorney Devendra Kisoon. I welcome also in our midst Mr. Jerry Diaz Sr., someone who was born in Guyana, lived in Guyana, in Mahaica region, and left Guyana when I was 2 years old. Mahaica is a very close to my heart in that it's an area where I have a second home, and I enjoy being in Mahaica for every minute of the time spent there. I'm happy, sir, to welcome you to this conference. And as I asked you earlier, I want that formula, what keep you looking so good for so long. If it is the black water in the Mahaica Creek, let me know. Welcome. Your son has played a very important role in sponsoring the seminar, and he is a Guyanese by birth, and we want to also welcome him. He's going to be here shortly, but Jerry Diaz is from the Unifor, a merged union, a very powerful amalgam of unions headed by the United Auto Workers of Canada. And in my days being a trade unionist in Carville, will remember the powerful Bob White of the United Auto Workers. Now those two unions formed Unifor, and Unifor is showing its hand in giving international solidarity to the sugar workers in Guyana, teaming up with GAU in sponsoring this event today. We appreciate every moment of the involvement of Unifor, and it is in that vein we say workers affected in one sector must find workers in other sectors feeling aggrieved. It has been so with the case of sugar workers in Guyana. When they were on major battles on the streets, solidarity came from workers across the country and internationally. Solidarity came from bauxite workers. And when workers from the bauxite industry, thousands of them were retrenched, thousands of their shop stewards were victimized, they received solidarity support in a meaningful way from sugar workers. That is what trade unionism is about. That is what we say, that when one worker is affected, all is aggrieved. And as this conference is convened today, we must recognize the struggles of the teachers of this country who are on the streets fighting for a better way of life, fighting for a living wage. The teachers aren't uncaring. The teachers aren't selfish. The teachers have no political motives. They aren't enemies of the state or the government. They are merely demonstrating that they need a living wage and they must be respected. And so this conference also, with leaders from the TUC and FITOC present, must register their solidarity, unqualified solidarity, with the teachers of this country and to ensure that their just demands are met. We can no longer sit down and believe that the struggles of sugar workers should be the struggles of sugar workers alone. That the bauxite workers will have their day and that we will allow them to struggle alone. We must come back to the days when solidarity must be given to any single worker affected. And so as we're meeting today to discuss and to formulate a strategy which will indicate that sugar is too big to fail, we must reflect on the plight confronting those thousands of sugar workers who have been on the breadline for in excess of 21 months. And not only have they been on the breadline, some of them have not had benefits to which they are legally entitled. Some of them have not been able to get their NIS contributions updated so that they can benefit from their NIS benefits. Some of them have not been able to send their children to school, and as we talk today, their children have not been going to school because of the economic crisis confronting them. And some of their children who have passed in excess of 6 subjects at the CXC cannot find a job after leaving school and qualified to have a job. They are on the breadline. We must be concerned with that. And so, sisters and brothers, comrades, excellencies, this conference is meeting at an opportune moment. It is meeting at a time when the plight of sugar workers is getting from bad to worse, when conditions are what we have never experienced since Guyana became an independent nation. Their conditions need some form of redress. And whatever we do today we must be able to make positive recommendations and ensure that positive decisions are made which will affect the lives positively of the sugar workers. You cannot have scores of children leaving school qualified for jobs, can't get jobs, qualified to enter the University of Guyana and cannot get entry to the University of Guyana because their parents are not working and cannot sign the guarantor form for their children. Something is wrong with such a system that deprive Guyanese children of an education. And I say here and now that the time has come when we must be able to give free education to our children from nursery to university to ensure that there is no victimization. Those scores of children who are waiting in hope for a job can find the doors open of the university, accepting them if we remove the horror of the guarantor forms and all the administrative humbugs. Our children, having made the sacrifice 5 years in high school and want to move on to university education, should not be prevented. We cannot have them walking the streets in an idle manner while they can be utilized. And I also make the call for more campuses of the university to be opened. Escobar is crying out for a campus of the university. Linden is crying out, and we need the university authorities to look at that. They never thought that we would have taken university outside of Georgetown. But the Berbice campus is an example which will show, the Berbice campus is an example which will show that if we put efforts in this direction, we can allow our children the privilege to higher education. Unfortunate children or children in communities which are having economic hardships should not be deprived of education. And I recall being head of the Public Service Ministry, the administrative head that is, that we were given clear policy guidelines in those days, that every single Amerindian child coming out of the interior location who wants to go to the university must be allowed to go to the university and must be financed during their tenure at the university. We must come back to those days where those who are not privileged to go to university must be allowed, must be given once they are qualified. So sisters and brothers, I want to welcome you on behalf of the sponsor of this program, to this conference, and the organizers of the Guyana Agricultural and General Workers Union, and to say that for 21 months or more, from the moment it was announced that the sugar industry will face closure, GAU has been in the forefront in seeking to defend the workers' rights and the workers' cause. Together with NACI, they have made numerous representation. They have fought many battles, but in these days sometimes our public officials do not listen and we make hasty decisions. And we close industries in a willy-nilly manner, not looking at the consequences which will follow. The closure of industries have created enormous difficulties for I welcome Brother Jerry Dias, whom I mentioned to you earlier, is from Unifor. And so I continue to say that despite all these struggles over the months, we have been unable to secure benefits for the workers. But we believe that with persistent agitation, with forging links and solidarity, we will be able to make progress in this direction and ensure that the sugar industry move on to the road of prosperity, and that the industry will be allowed space, breathing space, so that the workers' interests will be protected and the industry will be on the road to progress once again. We are disheartened at the manner in which the closure took place, and that has been repeated over and over. But one of the biggest disappointment, when they have been accusing the previous administration over the building of Skeldon factories, the Skeldon factory, and certain degree of mismanagement, all not true and all not properly examined. They should tell this nation why, when the previous administration under my chairmanship filed a lawsuit against those who were entrusted to manage the industry, filed a lawsuit for major damages, that they withdrew those lawsuits which were pending in the courts and settled for compensation. I welcome Minister of State Joseph Harmon also. So those are issues which we have to discuss. And we want to say that as we move into the program, we must take a dispassionate look at what is happening to the sugar workers, to the sugar industry, and what is happening with workers all over the country, and perhaps with the spirit of international solidarity, even look at the issues confronting our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean and further afield. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome our brothers and sisters from overseas. Welcome to our distinguished government and opposition parliamentarians. And I hope we will have a fruitful day of deliberations. I now introduce to you Comrade Komal Chan, President of GAU, who needs absolutely no introduction to bring remarks to this conference. Comrade Komal Chan.
Thank you, Comrade Chairman, Minister of State, Comrade Joseph Harmon, Opposition Leader Bharat Jagdeo, President of Unifor Jerry Dias and his colleague Alfredi, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of Parliament, fellow trade unionists, comrades all. I wish to join with our esteemed chairman in extending a warm welcome and to express our appreciation that so many of you have accepted our invitation to be with us for this one-day conference as we reflect on the sugar industry, one of our nation's most critical economic endeavors. The convening of this conference at this time, we believe, is important as it provides us an opportunity to reflect on whether the right decisions regarding the industry were made. What can be done to overcome the difficulties the industry now faces, and how we can approach the future to ensure its sustainability and viability. Such considerations are important as the industry still is, in spite of sugar's haphazard and callous minimization our country's single largest employer. As a state-owned enterprise, serious consideration must always be given to the lives of thousands of Guyanese who its operation touch. As has been said time and again, the sugar industry occupies a significant place in our nation and it is unique from many points of view. The GAU has recognized in recent times that some have sought to downplay its importance and to confine its role merely within the ambit of profit and loss. On the other hand, the GAU contends that we cannot ignore the widely known fact that any examination of the industry cannot be confined to such narrow outlook. Sugar has transcended mere finance and has become a social institution in our society. Some have argued that this should not be the case, but the reality is that its importance stretches beyond the black and white notion of profitability. Sugar's status in Guyana is not unique by any means. The GAU has recognized that across the world, industries and enterprises have grown beyond a mere source of employment. They become centers for the sustenance of entire communities. Decision makers have always recognized the importance of these industries, and they work to protect, encourage, and assist them to remain viable and operable, especially when one considers the consequences of them being non-existent. Literally, these industries are too big to fail. As we take stock of those factors, the sending home of 7,000 workers over the last 2 years without any plan to address their welfare and loss of their livelihood, clearly this has to be among the most callous of decisions ever made by any government in our country in our over half a century of independence. The government, by its very actions, has seriously affected communities, has shattered the hopes of the youth, and has pushed thousands of Guyanese in misery-filled lives. Today, for many of the workers who have been placed on the breadline, they remain right there, unable to find steady jobs, and in some cases, any job at all. Today, the hopes nurtured from such talk as sugar will never die, or we will fix sugar, heard boisterously during the 2015 election campaigns, have been dashed. It is most upsetting that this approach had taken, especially recognizing that it was not necessary in the first place, and there were very good and real possibilities to overcome the difficulties in the sugar industry. Indeed, when one looks at the advertisement placed in the media regarding the sale of the closed estates, one cannot help but be convinced that closure was the wrong decision. The now closed and for sale estates, which had been described as irretrievable with several spurious justifications advanced, are now being labeled as attractive investment opportunities. Investors are being told that the estates have the possibility of cogeneration. Alcohol, ethanol, packaged sugar and refined sugar, among other things. We are interested parties. We see interested parties being advised, for instance, at East Demerara, and there is, I quote, "The advantage of operating a sugar factory with packaging warehouse and fields in 5-hectare plots, each next to water transport system," end of quote. There will also be access to, I quote again from the advertisement, "well-established facility and nursery with several cane varieties and a local pool of experienced factory management and well-educated workforce," end of quote from the advertisement. It was also touted that the estate will offer 85% mechanization from mechanical tillage, stroke planting to harvesting, an excellent drainage and irrigation system with new pumps. It is therefore incomprehensible to the rational thinker that an enterprise with such obvious advantages was even identified for closure in the first place. The Gawo cannot help but wonder whether these clearly seen features did not heap out at our decision makers and cause them to second guess whether they were being properly advised or being led astray. We must emphasize once again our dismay that the decisions of the sugar industry were implemented without any sort of study to have a full understanding of the consequences and the decision to shutter estates. The clearly heartless, and some would say ruthless, approach to the sugar workers and their family represent one of the saddest periods in the history of our country. Can you believe that many workers are still to receive their full severance payments, which is a blatant contravention of our laws? In the period following the announcement that Wales would be closed at the end of 2016, we of the Gawo felt that the workers' struggle were indeed history-making, and that this period will be examined, studied, and discussed by future generations. For the many thousands whose lives depend on the industry, this was a rude awakening, as it seemed the administration just woke up and decided that it would miniaturize the sugar industry through estate closure and divestment, and in the process denied thousands a livelihood. Moreover, rubbing salt into the fresh wound, they would not say with any firmness what alternatives were prepared to put in place. It was disturbing news. The Gawo immediate reaction to the government position was one of disagreement. Similar views were also expressed by NASI, our sister union in the sugar industry, and the political opposition, along with widespread disagreement coming from individuals in all walks of life. Our union advanced what we felt were credible and convincing reason for the industry to be retained. That is, that in authoritarian class divided societies, the elites holding the reins of power never or hardly ever ensure justice for the working class. Thus the struggle for real pro-working people change must continue in our country. Let us take heart in the knowledge that time is the greatest judge. We are sure it will endorse the justice of our struggle and moreover correct the injustice of today. History and future generations of Guyanese will condemn harshly those who advance, approve, and implemented a plan which affected so many ordinary Guyanese, ordinary people and Guyanese. The time, though difficult and distressing, must not daunt us, but indeed impel us to be more determined, us to do more determined activities. We of the GAU pledge to continue to represent the workers' cause, to bring great attention to the workers' plight, and to press for effective support and solidarity for the cause. Comrades, as we reflect to discuss over the next few hours, our union could not ignore President Granger informing the public at his press conference last Friday that the government had a clear vision for sugar. For the GAU and the workers of the industry, the president's bold statement was a surprise. A cursory look at the government approach to sugar reveals a far from clear approach. In the 3 years of the Granger administration, we have seen the government closing these estates despite its own commission of inquiry saying it shouldn't. We have seen plans to transform cane cultivations to other ventures failing miserably. We have seen the government saying it would divest estate it previously decided to close without any explanation for the change of course. We have seen the Sugar Corporation substantially stripped of its assets and its shares transformed. We also cannot forget the imbroglio regarding the Board of Directors. Or neither can it escape our attention that the industry has borrowed $30 billion without a plan, akin to being up the river without a paddle. In this clear future the president speaks of, the clear future the president speaks of, the GAU is clear. We want the industry to succeed as a large number of Guyanese depend on its operations. We have seen the ramifications of the vacuum created by sugar, but success must involve a collaborative and comprehensive approach. There is no singular magic bullet, but hard work, commitment, knowledge, personnel, and of course a motivated workforce. A workforce that was denied wage increase in 2015, 2016, 2017. What will be their fate this year, we don't know. No motivation of a productive workforce. Former President and Prime Minister Forbes Barnum always spoke to the importance of productive workers, the bauxite and the sugar workers. Here we have a different situation. There is no singular bullet, but hard work, commitment, knowledge, personnel, and of course a motivated workforce. Factors which are critical elements in overcoming the difficulties as we have done time and again. GAU says, let unity and solidarity be our guide. Onwards to a successful conference. Thank you.